All right, Hariom everyone. So we will go ahead and get started. We'll start with opening prayers, and today our satsang will be 30 minutes because I believe we have teacher meeting at the end of this. So we will wrap things up at 11:15. So with that, let's start with Sahana Bhavatu, Vakraturna Mahakaya, Saraswati Namastubhyam, and Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Vakraturna Mahakaya, Surya Koti Samaprabha, Nirvignam Guru Me Deva, Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada, Saraswati Namastubhyam, Varade Kamarupini, Vidyarambham Karishyami, Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right, so we will be picking up again from Art of Living, the very introductory chapters, where Puja Gurudev sets up the need for religion and builds us up into the chapter called The Dual Path, the path of Shreyas and Preyas. So we'll investigate those middle chapters in how he's looking and analyzing the perspective of the materialistic scientists versus the spiritual scientists, and looks at the logic of their analysis to come to the understanding that spiritual science is very much a need in today's day and age, and how that will lead to analyzing the choices we make in our life. So, one thing we need to discover is, how do we make ourselves experience happiness for the maximum amount of time, for the maximum number of people, and, wait, there's 3 of them. What's our motto? For the maximum number of time. Oh my gosh, why am I forgetting the motto? But it's maximum, maximum, maximum. There's 3 of them. Meaning, the bhava behind that quote means that, can I experience happiness that is unconditional? Unconditional by place, unconditional by time, unconditional by the person experiencing that happiness. Is there such a state that can be achieved? And such a state really and honestly is the goal of any of our endeavors today. And let me just switch my expo marker. Can I still write with this? Yeah. Okay. Maximum happiness to the maximum number of people for the maximum number of time. There we go. Now I remembered. So the goal would be maximum happiness for the maximum number of time for the maximum number of people. This means infinite, unconditioned, now, how can we achieve this? How can we achieve this? There are 2 sets of scientists, and Puja Gurudev terms them as the materialist scientist versus the spiritual scientist. So let me put material scientists here. Material scientists versus spiritual scientists. Now, what are their approaches? And I will have 3 columns here, because the middle one here is commonality. What is common in both? The first is that they both have to be based on life experience. Based on life experiences. Now, this seems obvious, because we are used to materialist scientists, and their entire process is on the reality of the world, right? When it comes to spiritual scientists, we feel that maybe this doesn't apply. It feels like it's abstract philosophy or things that they go into meditation and they construct a really vague, something very difficult to understand. Is it really based off of real life? Yeah, okay, that could be a good one. So this is tangible versus intangible. But they're both based off of life experience. And that's exactly where I'm headed. Where, when it comes to the spiritual scientists, especially in Advaita Vedanta, they analyze the entire spectrum of experience. That includes the waking, dream, and deep sleep. Now, this is a really interesting analysis, and it's very important that it is based off of life experience. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have seen the movie Inception? Just raise your hand if you have seen it. And if you have not seen the movie, raise your hand. Okay, good. Just so I know everybody's awake and not in deep sleep. So in Inception, the very premise of that movie is, how do I know if this world that I'm seeing is the real world? Because what was the premise? They thought that they had the skill of traveling into someone else's dream, and in that person's mind, they can go into that person's dream and go into the inception, like your dream incepting. I don't know how that word works. So then and the perception of time also changes with each sequential dive into the next layer of dream. That 1 second at level 2 is actually 100 years in level 3, and then it's like 1,000,000 years in level 4. Yep. But the most important part of that movie is literally the last scene. Because what was the indicator or ruler to know if something is real or just a dream? It was that top. And my favorite part is when the top falls is when you know you're in real life. If it keeps spinning, then you're still in a dream state. My favorite ending of a movie, they keep that top going, and hold you there for at least a good minute, and then it blacks out. And now you're wondering, was that real or not real? Which is very much the question that Vedanta asks. So when we say that Vedanta and Advaita Vedanta based on real life, they do a full analysis of all three states and ask, what is the difference between these three states? What is that continuous feeling I feel in spite of being in deep sleep? Where does variation come from? Where does continuity come from? So like you said, they are not abstract philosophers that invent circumstances and then analyze it. They very much look at what is our experience today and can I explain it? They did that experiment so well that most of these questions we don't even realize to ask. So, another feature of both scientists is that their methodology is very similar. And we had sort of touched on this in the very beginning of Teacher Satsang, when we started, that the scientific process was what? Hypothesis, experiment, data collection, then verification, then conclusion. And this conclusion relates back to the hypothesis. So how does that work again? We conjecture a possible explanation for what we are seeing. We design an experiment to test these variables out. If I were to change this, does my hypothesis still hold or not hold? For example, if my hypothesis is, every time I see the road wet, it would have rained. That's my thesis. So then how do I do with this experiment? I study the condition of the road on sunny days, I see the condition of the road on rainy days, and if my hypothesis matches up, this is data collection, day 1, day 2, day 3, and I collect enough data, then verify. Was there a correlation between the rainy days and wet roads and sunny days and wet roads? Then I can come to a conclusion, yep, pretty much, that there were 100% of the time, every time it rained, the road was wet. And so then I come back to the hypothesis saying, this is a valid hypothesis. There can be variations in this. What if the road was wet on a sunny day? Suddenly, when I go back and verify my hypothesis, it's not true anymore. So then I have to adjust my hypothesis and try again. How can that be possible, to have a wet road on a sunny day? We left the sprinklers on, and instead of watering the plants, it waters the sidewalk. So like that, they base it off of real life experience, and through continuous iteration, they make sure that they check the, and I'm phrasing this from Puja Gurudev's actual line in commentary, that science is a growing field where it verifies the truthfulness of past conclusions. I thought that was a really good way of putting it. The growing field of science is built on the verification of the truthfulness of past conclusions. So with every iteration of verification, that knowledge system gets passed on to the next generation of scientists, and they build and grow and continuously work on that. Very similar is what our rishis, spiritual scientists, aka rishis. They have a similar process as well, but it's a little bit different, Here you have pramana. This is the means of knowing something. This is a source of knowledge. Then you have to practice it, meaning your sadhana. Then we come to anubhuti, and this becomes the verification for pramana. What do I mean by this? Practice or sadhana means that I'm not just reading the shastras and saying, okay, cool, they're right, they're always right. In fact, I take their teachings and try it out for myself. Then, after I progress in my sadhana, anubhuti means that I experience that higher state of reality, that supreme reality, as my own experience, not a forced teaching. I know that I am Brahman is one thing, but I am Brahman is a whole different thing. It is a experiential knowledge, so anubhuti. So Jivan Muktas are this state here. Jivan Muktas and Mahatmas. They're synonymous. Those gurus, the very fact that they are around experiencing that reality is proof that what the pramanas have said is true. So now you have a generation of lineage of Guru Shishya Parampara. That it is that Guru, after their own self-realization, that they are able to teach the next generation, this is what can be achieved. Now you go practice it yourself. Then that Shishya who has learned will practice it and apply it for themselves to their own sadhana. They themselves will come to this state and say, yes, what my Guru has taught me is true. So again, it's a very similar iteration of verification that gets passed down through the lineage. Next thing is the field of study. How do I spell field? Is it I-E or E-I? Okay, so I did have it right. Field of study. And here, this is where it differentiates. And Amma, you almost hit upon that point with tangible versus intangible. Instead, Puja Gurudev says, the scientists study the outer world, and the rishis study the inner world. The question they are trying to ask here is, what is the world? Whereas spiritual scientists are asking, what is man? So in this case, why have each of these scientists taken up this particular question? What was their original goal that they're trying to answer? How do I gain this kind of happiness? The outer world, studying it means, may the economists, politicians, scientists, and engineers, doctors, etc., all of these scientists, their goal is to improve life, to improve happiness. Please excuse my abbreviation. Smiley face means happiness. Improve life. Sorry, I have to edit this. Improve life by improving the environment. So I get to rearrange the circumstances that I live in so that I may experience an improved life. Therefore, technology improves, the harnessing of nature improves, the systems and laws and cultural norms that we live by constantly improves, because I'm rearranging the outer world so that I may bring about a more experience of happiness. But is this guaranteed? Can you name even one example of someone who has the best of environments but still doesn't have happiness? One example, I can give you a whole list. Come at me. So this does not guarantee this level of happiness. Because of this gap in achieving the goal, the rishis have said, then the environment alone cannot be the solution. There must be something else. Which is why they're asking, what is this inner world of man? Who is man? What is he made of? How does he interact with the world outside? How does that relationship actually affect the experience of happiness? So this is when we see that their goal was to improve life. We have to improve the mind. And again, our proof is, if a billionaire who is dejected and has persistence of sorrow proves that there's a lack, this doesn't completely answer that question. So this is why we need religion more than ever. And I put this on the board because this is one of the most, he has those punchlines in his commentary, Puja Gurudev, and he has an entire paragraph on how today's day and age, with the most amount of technological advancements, we see the most disastrous states of mind. Suicide rates have gone out the roof. Depression and anxiety have gone out the roof. Mental health is such a huge problem in today's day and age, even though we have the best of the best. Why? Because we have lost track of inner control and management of the mind. So, Puja Gurudev he wrote this book when? 1960s, 1970s? He said, now more than ever do we need religion than in the past, because of this loss of confidence in our inner world. So we need to come back to our roots and reconnect with the vision of stability that the rishis had for us in their science. So when it comes to living a successful life, I think the chapter now is called Secret to Success in Art of Living or Kindle Life. It's in one of those chapters. Let me see if I can move this board. Can't do it one-handed. So when it comes to the secret of success, one thing is we need to understand we have infinite potential within us. Discover infinite potential within. This is our nature. This is who we are. A lot of times when I'm talking to the chicks about this, I see them often trying to analyze their mind, trying to find, what are my talents, what are my skill sets, what am I really good at? Because, of course, they're trying to apply that in their career. But I tell them, stop boxing yourself into one category or the other. I think Myers-Briggs personality assessment is like really popular. Am I an INFP or an ENGT? I don't even know what those acronyms are. Because they're looking at their current tendencies and seeing if I can find that characteristics. Okay, now I'm sure that I have this personality. This is the only thing I'm at. Does that help with growth? Shastras tell us we are that self. We are of the same nature as Ishvara. Ishvara, who has every capacity in him. How would that capacity not be within me? Why should I limit myself in what I can do? Let me not box myself in. I can be good at everything. I just have to figure out how to do it. So this Shraddha in myself and in my own nature has to be the first step. Let me not say I can't do it. I won't do it. I can only do this. What am I going to do? I'm stuck here. Let's get rid of that negative thinking because that's not our nature. The self is infinite. The self is Sarva Shaktiman. It has every Shakti built into it. I just have to learn how to tap into it and bring it out. So then comes the second step that says, ordering our behavior to nurture, and that can include both courage to live by conviction. I'm putting a couple of thoughts on the board just so I can talk about it a little bit easier after I write it down. Oops. Thoughts lead to character, which lead to destiny. And I'm using that word very particularly because we're going to talk about that. Choices lead to patterns. Patterns lead to, again, destiny. So, ordering our behaviors to nurture every single potential we have within us. Nothing is not figure-outable. Okay, let me change the grammar of that sentence. Everything is figure-outable. And I kind of like that word because it shows us that it doesn't take much. It just takes our enthusiasm. Go dive into whatever field that it is and start figuring things out. Try it out, fail, learn from it, try something else, fix it, fine-tune it, adjust it, learn from every iteration of mistakes we make. And that is constant persistence of ordering our behavior to nurture that skill set. No one is perfect overnight. Even if you have a natural talent in it, doesn't mean you suddenly are good at it the day you're born. Even those child prodigies, though they know how to play tabla or piano as soon as they're born out of the womb, even they spend a couple of years training. So, learn to nurture that behavior. It reminds me of a story that I'd once heard where there was a father and a son out in the middle of Texas wild desert. And I have like a movie scene in my head right now, like Clint Eastwood kind of setting, right? They're in the outdoors, they're having a campfire. And of course, in that wilderness, there's two dogs that's with them, wolf-like dogs. And one of them was super skinny, and the other one was like a pack leader. So the son was, having a bunch of, food for the dogs, and the father stops him and says, "Hey, can you tell me which wolf is stronger?" And of course, he would say the skinny one. And he's like, "No, the stronger one is the one you feed. Because if I stopped feeding that strong wolf, he will decay over time, and that weak wolf will become stronger. If I fed the stronger one, he will stay strong, and the weak one will stay weak. So really, who's stronger? The one I feed." And here, it applies to the same thing. Ordering my behavior means I'm giving time, energy, and attention to fleshing out that skill set I have. Whatever I choose to feed in my mind is what will grow stronger. And so feeding comes from, one, having the courage to live by that conviction. There is a view of life that I've learned from the Shastras. May I live by that. May I believe in it enough that I will arrange my behaviors to follow it. Let me have that courage. that can be built thought by thought, choice by choice. When I have a persistent line of thinking, it develops into a certain character that I have. Don't we judge others saying, oh, he's got a very strong character? Why? Because every thought he expresses in his speech looks like a leader. He talks like a leader, walks like a leader, behaves like a leader. So thoughts turn into character. Character designs our destiny. Another way of thinking about it, every choice that I make creates a pattern within myself that will then design my destiny. And why did I pick the word destiny? Because I'm busting one of the most common questions that comes from Vedanta. Does Vedanta say we have free will, or does it have destiny? Or is it all like pre-fated and all of that? How does this work? Puja Gurudev says, listen, it's both. You have the free will to make the choice you want to, and based on those choices, you will reap the consequences, which sets up the destiny you will encounter going forward. So past choices create future destinies. So it is both. Why does he say both? Just because there has to be an Ishvara, there has to be a fabric of law that gives me the consequences of the actions that I chose. That I can't control. But what I can control is the choice I make and what path I will follow and the consequences I will experience. So it has to be both. The past free will design my future fate. And it is coming back to this, choices and patterns that I have. Therefore, what choices should I make? Even this, the Shastras have given. There are two choices. This is called a dual path. And this comes in our chapter, and I'll wrap up in 5 minutes, so I apologize, give me a few more minutes. The dual path. This is Preyas and Shreyas. Now, the most common way or misconceived way of defining these two paths is, oh, it's good and bad. It's either of those choices. But interestingly, Puja Gurudev defines this as path of, let me start with the more obvious one. Shreyas is path of good. You would think this is path of bad, but instead, Puja Gurudev says path of pleasant. Pleasant or pleasure, either one. Of pleasant. And I think I spelled that wrong, but that's okay. Path of pleasant, why? What's the difference between these two? Here's my list. Convenience and yes, so here I'll put convenience. Yes, instant joy. What else? Give me the contrast of it too, the opposite of it. So there's more obstacles here. There are more obstacles in the beginning. Long-term joy. Long-term, sustainable joy. There we go. So what Puja Gurudev says, and it also comes in self-fulfillment, so high school curriculum, you should be able to give me these answers, that one, this entices and it's pleasant in the beginning. And I'll say instant joy in the beginning alone. Then, but really, it is results are impermanent. And finally, this leads to sorrow, and this is the path of adharma. Then, this would be the opposite. Results are permanent, and leads to true happiness, and I'm saying with capital H, and this is the path of dharma. This is the list that we find with Shreyas and Preyas. Last 1 minute or so, just to give an example, and we'll end the topic here and pick it up next time. That If I don't care for duties or prescription or what is better, the higher altar that I'm working for, the bigger vision that I'm working for, if I have no care for it, it is completely dictated by my ego, my likes and dislikes, then I'm constantly jumping from one gratification to the other. But in the long run, will that lead me down a good path? Best example, health. In the beginning, taking care of my body, making sure that I go to the gym, that I stick to a diet is painful in the beginning. I have to control myself. I have to ignore what I like and dislike. I have to fight my own emotions, anger, tiredness, sleepiness, irritability, all of that I have to deal with, and it feels like a lot in the beginning. But if I stick to it, down the road, there's more strength and courage that gets built, more stability, and it brings longevity to this body itself. So leads to results that are more permanent, even if in the beginning it is painful. Whereas on the other side, if I succumb to joyful, instant gratifications, they are like flashes of light. Like, a magician where they trick you with that flash of light. It doesn't last very long. And what's left behind? A painful experience of sorrow and constant disintegration of my mind. I put dharma and adharma because I'm taking the word to uphold and to integrate. If it's adharma, it destroys the stability and integration of my mind, and therefore not a good path to take. But if I take the time to think of something higher, think of something better, despite how painful it may be in the beginning, that will keep me integrated and evolving on a constant basis. So of the two wolves, Preyas or Shreyas, which one is stronger? The one I feed. The one I feed will be stronger, and that feeding is the choices I make. So yeah, Preyas I can fall to it very often. Shreyas I can also fall to it, but it all depends on moment to moment choices I make, down to even the thoughts I have. This is what it takes to follow the path of Preyas and Shreyas. And next time I'll pick up this idea, because this idea of Preyas and Shreyas comes from Kathopanishad, when Nachiketa is speaking with Yamarajji, and Yamarajji is offering the 3 boons for having waited 3 days for Yamarajji, and why he ends up becoming the best student that Lord Death himself has encountered. And it is because of this topic that we take up Preyas over Shreyas. So we'll continue this next week. I will wrap up. I apologize, I was 5 minutes late, but now let's switch into the teacher meeting. So coordinators, stage is yours.